Welcome everybody to episode 2 of The Female Perspective from MXP Magazine. I'm your host Jackie Riess, joined again by Brodeur and Lindsey Bradley. How's it going tonight?
Doing good. What about you guys?
Good, good. How are you?
Good, thanks. So we're going to recap Oakland Supercross tonight. I kind of want to start with the track. It seemed like a more difficult track to me compared to Anaheim 1. Two sets of whoops, which we also saw at Anaheim 1, but these seemed a bit more treacherous for people. A sand section after the finish line, and even the soil itself to me seemed a little bit more difficult, a hard base with seemingly marbly kind of topsoil on the top. So what did you guys think of the Oakland Supercross track?
Yeah, the whoops were definitely something again this weekend. You could see by the end of the night they were just so bad. Like there was one big rut going through it all, and I can't imagine doing whoops like that is already so hard. I can't imagine having to stay in a rut through the whole thing. Because like imagine you go from like being in a rut, so being so low, to like hitting a place where there isn't a rut that's super high, and it just you go down like immediately. So super difficult for sure. And the sand track was a plus this weekend, but I feel like this isn't the most killer sand track we've seen. Like it didn't kill so many people. Some people mostly stayed up through it, so it wasn't so bad. But yeah, definitely a different track than last weekend.
Yeah, I second that. It was I liked it. I mean, I liked the layout. I liked they added in sand sections and stuff like that. I thought it challenged a lot of riders though as well with having two up sections. And like I've said, there was a rut in between the whole thing. So can only imagine when you have 4.5, 5 foot deep whoops and then you're faced with a rut also in between. So yeah. But no, I like the layout personally. I think it challenged a lot of them for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I also got to thinking about how short riders versus tall riders really have to react differently in the whoops. We're all on the smaller side, nowhere near the the 6 foot, 6+ foot tall guys. What do you guys think is the difference for short riders versus tall riders in the whoops or just on the track overall?
Well, definitely in the whoops, like being a taller person, you have more leg control, so it definitely helps you a ton. But also, there's a lot more weight movement over the bike. So the weight shifts is a lot. So whenever the nose goes down a bit or something, and you go forward on the bike, the impact of it is so much bigger than if you're smaller. So has a difference on that, but I guess it all depends. There's negative and positive sides to both of them for sure.
Yeah. I think being a little bit taller in the whoops is definitely an advantage anyways, but like I've said, it's almost hard to correct that sort of thing, but I also could second that when you're short, it also might be hard to correct something like that if anything were to go wrong. So there's maybe a happy medium in between, but again, like the three of us aren't outrageously tall, so we're not too familiar with that sort of thing, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I kind of think like being a smaller rider, I've become more precise with my riding. So, um, I don't have so much room for a mistake. So I have to be very precise with my technique in these kinds of situations in order to avoid those mistakes. So, like you said, the taller rider has a little bit more maneuverability and impact on what the motorcycle is doing in an emergency situation. But that might play into their riding style. They might be a little bit looser with their technique, and whereas the shorter rider may have to be a little bit more precise.
Yeah, you often see taller riders like their knees go so high over the seat that they can't tight on the bike. They can't keep their knees tight on the bike as much, and sometimes they're a bit more like jammed up on the
Hunched
bike because
over.
they're so big. Yeah, hunched over. So you can definitely see the difference. And like I said, some plus and minus to both of them, but I'm good with being short.
Yeah, me too. I agree.
Same. So moving into our Canadian highlight for the week, just Cole Thompson. They actually didn't have KTM Junior, if I'm correct. I didn't see any results for it.
I
They
didn't.
had the Supercross Futures instead. Cole Thompson, 12th overall, tied for 12th in points now, 5th in the heat race. We'd called it last week. We expected him to improve 2 positions forward. How do you guys think he will continue to progress into San Diego and beyond?
I think it's two position now, but if it's a two position every weekend, it won't be long until he's out there. But it's definitely good, and I think this two position ahead shows that he's learning more and more. And to be honest, the results this weekend were just all over the place. So you never know, and weekends like this happen all the time too. You never really know what's in the bag for him, but um, yeah, I'm excited to see, but I can't really tell for sure what's going to happen. But for sure, he's going to keep moving up.
Yeah, I think if he progresses the way that he has been, like I've said, two positions every week and won't be long. I also think that once he gets more comfortable on, as he's on a different bike brand this year, I think once he gets more comfortable with a different chassis and that sort of thing and bike setup, I think once he gets that dialed in, he'll really start to show his real speed. And not that he hasn't already, but I think it's just going to get better and better as the weeks go on.
Yeah, I was impressed with that fifth place in the heat. Like that, going into the main, that put him at about 10th. So I think if he can continue to have solid starts, I think that'll put him in a great position to show everything that he's got in the tank.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
for
agree.
sure.
So 250 West, last week we talked a lot about Christian Craig and how impressive he is. He seems to be impressing himself a bit, but also knows that he has the ability to perform at that level. Do you guys think he'll continue to win, podium? Where do you think Christian Craig is going to go throughout this season?
I think he's starting to be pretty undefeated. Well, he is undefeated so far, but the statement he's making by winning those races so easily and always being the first in heat races, main races, like he's making quite the statement, and I think that's got to build confidence as well. So I think I don't see that streak ending anytime soon for sure.
Yeah, neither do I. I still think he's super impressive on his bike. His speed and his aggression is really starting to show, and I think he's kind of seeing the title, and I think that's what he's after. So I think he'll improve every single week, and I hope he does anyway. I'm a big Christian Craig fan for sure.
Yeah, and I think he'll be able to do whatever it takes to win the championship. So if he's not going to win that night, he'll be okay with second, knowing the long game more so than maybe some of the younger, less matured riders that are thinking about the race in the moment. So I think his veteran mentality and just technique going through the series will really pay off for him throughout the season. And I really hope that he avoids injury like he has in the past. That would be such a bummer way to have a season, go away for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
So who else impressed you guys in Oakland?
I think honestly, I was also impressed by Hammaker. I could see him that he's always charging and he always had that never give up attitude. Even though he may not always be the fastest guy, he's always learning, and I think from what I understand, he's pretty young, so I think he's just going to keep getting faster and faster as well. So yeah, I don't see him out of the top 5 anytime soon either. I was also very impressed by Hammaker.
Yeah, for sure. A top 5 when you're pretty young and you don't have that much experience is definitely something noticeable, and you just take that and learn from that so much. So definitely, I think he's gonna keep doing better. And I can say I was also impressed, but like kind of in a bad way, but by Shimoda. Like that was quite the show he put on in the main, just mistakes after mistakes, and I don't know what happened or where it started from, but it just wasn't ending. So sucks for him, and I don't think we don't typically see that a type of stuff coming out of him. So hopefully he puts it back together for next weekend.
Yeah, and Shimoda especially was leading laps in his heat race, got passed by Mosman, but stuck with him. So for me, at that point in the evening of racing, I was just expecting him to be okay. Like I was like, oh, maybe it was those first race jitters that were, holding him back last week, and then we get to the main and we see all these mistakes again. So I too was surprised by Shimoda, and I want to come back to him in a bit. But I personally was impressed by Thrasher. Last week I talked about how he had kind of disappointed me a bit for being a 2-race winner. I think he really rebounded and finished 5th overall in the night. So I was impressed by him and seemingly quietly getting to a solid finish.
Yeah, I agree.
I also thought it was pretty cool that Stank Dog qualified on the 125.
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
two-stroke fan myself, um, it was just so cool to see, hear the two-stroke on TV. I thought that was awesome. Do you guys think that there's a place for two strokes in professional racing? Maybe in one-off races like we've seen at Straight Rhythm. That's everyone's comment, like, oh, we want two strokes back, bring back two strokes. Do you think there's a place for that in professional racing?
Um, I think I've always grown up with the races being 250, 450, and to me, like the 125 two-stroke class is not a kids class, but a up and coming kids class, I'd say. Like, like it's part of the kids transition when they go up. They go from small bike to the two-stroke class before getting in the big guys class. So for me, it's part of the transition, but it's not, it's not there. And it's definitely fun to see some guys like Stank Dog being able to, do so good and qualify and get the TV time that he deserves. But he's always going to be at a disadvantage with that bike in the races. So, yeah, I don't know. For me, it's a transition class.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree and disagree at the same time, but again, I'm with Jackie on that one. Like I'm a big two-stroke fan, and that's kind of where I grew up, and I'm still on one now. So, I personally, I'd like to see them bring back the old 125 class in Supercross. I think that was pretty cool, and I mean, I know it'll never happen, realistically thinking, but I think it would be pretty cool to have guys like him and some fast guys on 125 just going out there and battle. It sounds so cool. I mean, why not?
Yeah, or even like old retired guys, like just bringing them back for like how Pro Motocross did it for a while, the 125 All-Star class. Triple Crown has a similar class, but is connected to a whole series instead of just one-off races. Bringing in some old racers or up-and-coming kids and putting them on for a 4 or 5 lap race in the middle of the evening would be so cool, and I think would fulfill people's expectations or desires of having those two strokes back in professional racing.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
You and me, Lindsay, we could go do battle in the 125 Supercross.
Yeah, I know. I raced a little bit of premix this year, and I agree with Ev to a certain point too. Like, there's the Triple Crown Series has that premix class, but I was racing against kids that were like 14 up and coming in the amateur ranks. So like there's those guys, but I also agree with you when you said even some old retired guys that would hop on a 125 and absolutely kill it, like Mike Brown. Yeah. So I don't know. I'd love to see it anyway, just personally.
Yeah, it would also make it just being able to show off people's talent, right? Like, it's so much more difficult to ride a Supercross track on a 125. It would, make for more mistakes from people, make for closer racing. You make one mistake in a rhythm section, you've messed up the whole rest of the lane. So I think it would be really amazing racing, but like Evan said, it logistically may not work out for professional series.
Yeah, because you already have 2 big classes as well, right? So if you don't want to substitute one, because like the 250 and 450 are both super important, and a 3-class event would be a disaster. Like, they always barely make it time wise, so a three main disaster would not work. But like, you never know in the future, maybe it'll be separate events and stuff, but yeah, we'll see.
Or maybe it turns into an e-bike.
Yeah. I mean, in the foreseeable future, for sure, I could see that 100%.
Okay, so we had talked a little bit about Jo Shimoda making mistakes in the main event. When those mistakes start to happen, how do you guys reset your focus? And I think we may have talked about this a little bit last week, but just like, how do you overcome yourself? Like, I know, like, I just kind of get scatterbrained and really lose it, and then I'm like, man, I wish I would have pulled that together. So how do you guys reset your focus after you start making mistakes like that?
Well, I once trained with a guy, Club 57 in Florida, and he once told me that when you make a mistake, you have 0.5 seconds to get the fuck over it, using his words. Because, the longer you spend dwelling on your mistakes, the more mistakes you make, because you're not focused on the race ahead. So like I think I kind of try to use that mentality and being like, I made a mistake, but so what? Like it's not going to dictate the whole race, and I'm not going to get better by focusing on what I just did. And like I can think about it again and beat myself up after the race is done, but for now the focus is not on that. So um I try to always be like, it happens, you're like, okay, it happened, on to the next thing. And like I said, it's 0.5 seconds and then you gotta forget about it.
Yeah, I agree. I just kind of take a few deep breaths or like get my breathing back in check, and I'm like, let's go. It is what it is. And you just kind of have to try and keep that positive headspace, because if you get into a negative headspace, then you're just going to keep making those mistakes over and over and over, and you're never going to get out of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely fall into the making mistakes over and over and over again and letting it get away from me. So I appreciate the tech tips, you guys.
Yeah.
So another thing about Shimoda that I was kind of thinking about is going into the season, I feel like he was kind of seeded to be the number one person on that Pro Circuit Kawasaki team. I think just from overall perspective, because we didn't have a whole lot of knowledge or data on Hammaker on the team. When you have those expectations put on yourself and then you're not performing to them, maybe your own expectations, maybe you're getting pressure from the outside, from the team. How do you turn things around on a bigger perspective, on a season scale perspective, instead of just those, race by race mistakes? How do you turn around your whole season?
It's hard. It takes a lot of time talking to yourself and putting things out in the open, talking it out and figuring out like what works, what doesn't work, make some changes. Like we always say to not make changes throughout a season, but at some point, if it's not working, then there's no point in staying the same. You might as well try something different. So I think if something's not working, you gotta sit down and fix it. So I think it's that's what it's gonna take. That's what it's gonna take, and expectations put a lot of pressure on your shoulders. So at some point, also telling yourself like, it is what it is. Like I can't change it, and like I'm not gonna be better because people expect me to be better. Like that's not what matters. So, just taking that into perspective, I think is the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, personally, I had a lot of pressure coming from a lot of people that were close to me growing up, like on a personal level. But I knew deep down that them being hard on me was just them not being able to express the way that they actually feel, or it might be the way that they actually feel, just expressing it in a different way. And that's just what they wanted. They just wanted the best for me at the end of the day. So I just try and like take that into my own hands and learn from my mistakes and take something positive away from every time, whether it be, could be anything really. But I think it is really hard to try and mentally try and refocus, but I try and take that mostly into my own hands and just take a positive from everything.
Yeah. Yeah, and I too think that, the visualization and coaching yourself and just making yourself believe in yourself again, like you had mentioned, that takes a long time and a lot of mental coaching, mental practice. But at the end of the day, like, I know that I put the most pressure on myself. Like, because of that, I'm going to have to be the one that goes to fix that.
Yeah.
So it's definitely difficult, especially when things start snowballing race after race after race. But I do think, going back to Joe Shimoda, that he has positives to take away from it. Like you had mentioned, Lindsey, he had a great hole shot in the main. He had a great heat race. Like, focusing on those things and making those the priority in your mind and not thinking about the mistakes that you'd made in the past.
That's right.
Moving on to the 450 class, who impressed you the most?
Well, I guess I gotta give it to Anderson. Like he won a first race in 4 years, and I can't even imagine what that feels like. And for that, every single hats off this weekend goes to him. Like he deserves all the praise from the weekend, and nothing can take that away from him.
Yeah, I agree. He had a really solid ride. He was patient. He had lots of smart passes. Well, not lots, but a few smart passes, and he stayed up, most importantly, because there was a lot of people that didn't stay up, and that really played a factor into their overall result on the weekend.
Yeah, and he looked good. He looked fast. He looked smooth. Like, I was impressed also. I was also impressed, in particular, for Ferrandis in the heat race. He put on this really thoughtful pass on Dean Wilson in this, I think it was a 90-degree turn into a rhythm section. And he just kind of pushed Dino wide a little bit, and it messed up his entire rhythm section. So I guess I want to ask you guys, how do you know when to set up a pass? How do you know what kind of an impact your pass in this position on the track is going to make on that other racer's, you know, continuation of their race?
Um, I guess it depends. If you're coming behind someone and you know like your speed is much faster, then you just go by, do not care. Like I always try to be mindful of other riders, but when you gotta go, you gotta go. And sometimes when you start thinking about it too much about like, oh, where could I pass this person? Where could I, what would be the best spots? Then you start falling behind the person. And my dad always said that I take up the speed of the person in front of me if I stick around them too long. So um, as soon as I start falling behind someone and just following, then I follow instead of trying to pass. So if I know I'm faster than someone like quite a bit, then I'll make that pass happen right away. But if it's someone I'm closer in speed with and stuff, I'll take my time. And usually I'll stand back a little, try to observe a bit, lines and stuff, and then get closer and, wait for my opportunity to open up. Like people make mistakes, mistakes were human, and it happens all the time. So you got to be there for when that mistakes happen or for when that door opens to just fucking go. So that's kind of like the way I see it.
Yeah, I'm pretty observant too. Like I try and maybe stay back a little bit and maybe pick up on a little bit of their weaknesses, and then jump on the opportunity when it comes. But yeah, it's hard to be patient, especially I'm on a 125, so sometimes you just have to go when it's time. You just have to go.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
if there's one thing that riding with guys like taught me, it is that if you've got to go and you got to touch to go, then ram it in. Like
Yeah,
they're not gonna care, so you should not.
no.
Like
yeah.
I've been like pushed off the track, like T-boned, like all of it, like slammed into, and like when they gotta go, they gotta go. So if you've gotta go, then do what you need to. Like it's your race as long as it's clean and not Marskin against Anderson, I think it was last weekend. No,
Mhm.
Marskin against Stewart
Mhm.
Mookie. That was just dirty. But as long as it's clean, do what you got to do. We're at the end of the day, we're racing and we're there for a reason.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's a good point. Like, girls racing other girls is a lot different dynamic than girls racing guys or guys racing
Guys
girls
versus guys, yeah.
and guys versus guys. So, uh, I used to get kind of upset about it. Like, why the heck would this guy like push me off the track? Why would he do that to me? And I would take it all personally, like as a girl. But then I got over it, and I was like, like if I want to be out there, I'm just gonna be one of them, and I have to, learn how to play like that, learn how to play the mental and the strategic game, of racing against these guys who are much more aggressive. So, yeah, over the years, I've definitely become less sensitive, taking like these harsh passes less personally, um, and just learning how to be a better, more aggressive racer myself from racing with the guys instead of just racing with girls.
Yeah, and like I kind of did a social experiment with that one. I think, God, it must have been back in 2015 or 16, and I was trying to qualify for Lourdes, and I wanted to have another class to race at the regional. So like on top of the ladies class, so I had more practice time and wouldn't just race the ladies class. So I decided I wanted to qualify. Well, I was racing B at that point, so I tried to qualify in the 250B class for the area, but qualifier. But I knew like shit, I knew it was gonna be crazy. Or no, I think I qualified for the area and that was the regional or something. Anyways, I know that weekend We knew it was going to be crazy with the guys and stuff. And we actually tucked my hair in my helmet for the whole weekend to see if the guys, because it was like a new kind of race. And the guys didn't really know me. And that weekend, yeah, it was an area qualifier because it was a different qualifier in the women's class. So I was only doing 250B that weekend. So the guys couldn't really know, like, I was racing another class. I had yellow number plates and I tucked in my hair. And it was so funny because the whole demeanor of the guys was so different. Like they would say like, "Hey, what's up, man?" and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, what's up?" I'm a very short man, but what's up, you know? Like, and for the whole weekend, I was treated as a guy, and you know what? I was not blocked past. I was not, I did not see a guy do stupid shit around me or turn bad shit crazy, and it was like I was typical guy. But you see, if I had that hair out of my helmet, it would have been totally different thing. So it just goes to show that, you know, something happened in their brains and they just can't control it.
Yeah. It's funny this got brought up in conversation because I actually found a GoPro from like 2012 or 13 racing super minis, and I got smashed into so hard and pushed over the berm, and it was on my GoPro. And I remember thinking, I'm like, what the F? Like, why? But there's very, very select, like, I'm not afraid to do it now. I've learned my lesson now, racing super mini, schoolboy, junior, those guys classes. So I've learned my lesson, but now there's very select few people that I'll smash into because I know that they'd give it right back to me, and that's just the way that it goes. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point too. Like, just knowing who you're racing against. Like, obviously, these guys in Supercross in the pro classes, they know who they can make those kinds of passes on, who they can't. But that trickles down to the local level too. Like, think about who you're racing. You know, so and so is gonna give it right back to you, or this person is always gonna pass you clean. Like,
yeah,
I guess that's like maybe an understated part of racing is knowing who you're racing against. And for me personally, like when I go to new places and I don't know who I'm racing against, I feel more on edge than if I'm racing the same people that I race here at home.
Yeah, it's like when you race the same people, you know what kind of riders they are and kind of what to expect when you're passing them. Like, are they gonna go batshit crazy, or you know, like, are they like, can I trust? Sorry, can I trust them like on the jump and stuff, jumping next to them, or like, are they gonna jump like cross side? So when you know someone, you kind of know that stuff, and when you show up to a new place with different people, you kind of have to like be a bit more careful because you don't know that stuff. You know, even if you're racing the B class, some of them will jump from left to right and right to left every single chance they get.
yeah, exactly.
So back to 450 Supercross. Obviously, Anderson had a great race. Um, he seemed pretty patient to make that pass into first, and once he got into first, took off with it. Really awesome for him, like we had talked about earlier. So in two races, we've had two different winners, and I hope that there's significant parity in winners in the results this year. How many winners do you guys think that we will see throughout the year?
At least one every week, I think.
Yeah,
Like
I
maybe a
agree.
repeat or two, but so far so good. And like the guy, I was just telling it in the other show I did that, you know, the fact that Rognan fell and could only get back up to 13, it's just fucking nuts because he's one of the fastest guys out there and we know it. So the fact that he could only get back up to 13 shows how many fast guys there are, because like he might have been knocked up a bit from his crash during the day, but still, you know, to have 13 guys faster than Ken in the race, it's crazy. And it didn't take him that long to get back on the bike. So you can just see how many fast guys there are. So we can expect any of them to win at any point.
Yeah, I agree. And like looking back on the Nitro qualifying times, there's only like a second within the top 12 or 13, 14 even guys. So I wouldn't expect any less than maybe a couple repeats here and there, but I would expect at least every one of those fast guys to get a win for sure.
Yeah, at least one.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to bring up of how close their lap times are. So when you do fall, even if you're just down for 5 seconds, like you're not going to be able to make up that time with a lap time that's maybe 1 second faster, if that, than the people in front of you. So I don't know. I think quite a few, but again, who knows? Like someone may become dominant. There's a lot of guys out there that should have a win this year. But yeah, I hope we see a lot of winners this year. It makes for good racing, of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Last week we were really high on Sexton. We thought, he was going to do great things. He had a win coming. He had a great heat race. He won the heat race, I believe. But he finished 9th in the main, and it's not exactly what we expected. And we were all talking earlier, and we don't really know what happened to him. But on lap 9, he had a lap time of 1:11 compared to his normal lap time that was about 1:01. So something must have happened to him on lap 9 when he had that longer lap time. Do you guys think he will rebound next week? Is this just some fluke thing? Maybe he just had a fall. Is he going to pick it back up next week? Do you think he'll maybe even get a win next week?
With how good he did last week, I don't think this week is a testament to anything. And, it happens, bad weekends will happen, bad days will happen, bad races will happen. So I think it was just a one-off, and I don't think it's going to affect the rest of it.
Yeah, I agree. And he did have a pretty gnarly crash with Roxon in practice there. So
yeah.
I almost half expected it, and that sounds terrible to say, but I mean, like I've said, it happens, and we're all human, so everyone's got bad races here and there. And I think he'll come back next week, ready to go. I don't see him out of the top 3 for sure.
And say what you want, but rolling on your teammate's head, it's gotta play in your head at some point, on some level.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just having a crash in practice or qualifying, it just sets the tone of the day totally different, compared to if you just had a crash in the heat race or something, just in the main event. Starting the day off rough doesn't make for, great success projection for the rest of the day. Yeah, I think you guys are spot on. I think he'll rebound. But like we were talking about earlier, it's hard to make up that time when everyone's within the same few seconds lap time. Even if you do fall, it's hard to make that up. So hope to see great things from him next week.
Yeah, and I even like you said, Jackie, it's hard to come back from a crash like that. It may be a little bit different, and it might set the day tone a little bit different if it was just a tip over, but that was a pretty gnarly get off. So yeah, I think he'll come back for sure. Hopefully, anyways.
Yeah, I think it made for a very interesting podium. Anderson, AP, and Barcia, which is something that I wouldn't really expect to see on the podium. But I'm thinking of this shot that they have at the end of the main, and the 3 guys come off. They're all giving each other knucks, and then they all just hug. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I thought it was so kind of bizarre, kind of funny, but really great sportsmanship out of those top 3 guys.
Yeah, for sure. They're all kind of underdogs, so I think they must be all pumped for each other, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Which is really nice to see.
Agree.
It's nice to see that out of the pro guys. They're not just, hardcore. They don't want to, acknowledge each other. They're all there to have fun and do well, and that's cool to see from all of them.
Yeah, you don't really see that too often in pro level racing either, so it was nice to see for sure. Good level of sportsmanship.
Yeah. And with Barcia, 2/3 going into the 3rd round of the series, he has the red plate, which is, again, kind of shocking to me. I never really think of him as Mr. Consistent, but he's had the red plate going into, the beginning part of the series before. How long do you guys think he will hang on to that red plate?
Hopefully, as long as possible, because that gas is going to look sick as hell with the red plate on it. That's all I have to say. Fellow gas rider now, I wanted to stay as long as possible.
And you're not even being a little bit biased, are you?
No. Well, I said fellow gas rider, I said it.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I could see him holding it for a little while anyway. He's not very, he hasn't been super consistent over the last few years, but consistency is what it is now. And 3-3 for the red plate. I'd take it.
Yeah,
For sure.
if he manages to stay in the top five for then like most of the races, like you never know what can happen because the guys so far have been so inconsistent from one race to another. You know, like we've got Ken that did 113. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so if the guys keep doing that the whole season and he managed to like not fluctuate too much, you never know how it can end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's part of the game, right? Is being there and being up front. You know, you don't have to win every race to win a championship. It's a long term 17 races. That's a lot of races to be
Yeah.
Oh,
consistent
yeah.
over. So if you're there for all of them, you know, it's anyone's game. But I think I agree. I think he'll hang on to it for a while as long as he stays within that top five.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, you guys. Any other concluding thoughts? Any other surprises? People that impressed you for Oakland Supercross round two?
I mean, I was just gonna say before we did this, I was scrolling through Instagram, and I don't know if you guys saw on Kenny's Instagram that picture that he posted of his helmet from that
Mm-hmm.
crash.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty gnarly. It was broken in like a few spots and broken in bad ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted to point that out because that was a hard hit for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think next week is up for grabs. I predicted Sexton for this weekend, and he ended up so far behind. So I don't think you can really know. And with how things are changing up so fast, uh, it's nobody can tell. But I'll definitely put Christian Craig for the 250 though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I agree. 450 class is up for grabs from anybody, but Christian seems to be dominant in the 250 class. Lindsay, going back to the helmet thing, like, I'm kind of surprised they let him continue to ride, like,
Right?
with his
Yeah,
helmet like that. That's,
yeah,
it seems unsafe to me. Like, if you hit the ground again, like, that helmet is not gonna protect you again. So
yeah.
it seems a bit dangerous in my opinion, but not my call
I
to
mean,
make.
yeah, I know exactly. I agree with you, but at the same time, they have to be cleared, but like medically cleared,
Yeah,
for concussion protocols. And then as well, I would go ahead and assume that he probably has a spare helmet.
sure.
Yeah, so he was putting a brand new helmet on, and if he was medically cleared, he was medically cleared. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I thought back right away to that crash that McAdoo had last year,
Yeah.
and they cleared him from that. So then that was a hard hit. So, I mean, those guys know what they're talking about, and if you're good to go, you're good to go.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
glad that
Yeah,
he was racing.
Yeah, I think more so just like that qualifying session that before he was able to go get that other helmet that they
Oh
let
yeah,
him continue to ride that qualifying session with that helmet just broken and broken like that's I guess what shocked me a lot that
yeah,
they weren't just like, hey, go back,
absolutely.
get your other helmet, we'll see you for the next qualifying session or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, I agree, 100%.
yeah, for
I mean, it
sure.
is kind of dangerous when you put it that way. It does seem kind of dangerous for sure.
Yeah. But like you said, I'm glad that he was able to rebound and still be part of the show. You know, it'd be horrible to have someone who has won a race already just not be a part of it at all. So that would
Yeah,
really have been a damper on the whole season for him.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. Thank you for joining me for episode 2 of The Female Perspective from MXP Magazine. It's been fun as always. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having us.
And thank you everyone else for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another episode.